The latest John Wick spin-off film, Ballerina, just released, and you know what? After years of my friends telling me to watch these movies, I realized that I still haven't watched them yet. So with this series seemingly growing into a wider universe of films and television with no signs of stopping, I figured I better get moving before the hype train leaves me behind. So here are my very subjective thoughts on the John Wick franchise with my very arbitrary ratings and a not-so-serious tier list. Time to watch these films for the very first time. The title simply being John Wick might sound kind of lazy, but given how many times they say the name John Wick in this movie, I'll let it pass this time. So who is this mysterious John Wick? Well, he was a retired hitman, but unfortunately gets sucked back into the life of murdering a bunch of people after not only the death of his wife that, led to his retirement to begin with, but after the son of a Russian mob boss also decides to break into his house, steal his car, and kill his dog, which is the perfect motivator for revenge. And revenge he does in fact seek, as John Wick scours the seedy underbelly of New York City, killing a bunch of other assassins and criminals, including that mob boss's son. Then the mob boss guy, whose name I can't remember, the villains in these movies are not great. He wants to get revenge on John Wick, and it's a whole bunch of stuff, and when it's all said and done, John Wick just so happens to end his killing spree at a dog kennel where he decides to adopt a new dog. Now, all of that is a pretty simple revenge story, but it's a good enough emotional kickoff for the intense and brutal action scenes that populate the film, which is why this even exists. It's a vehicle for fun Keanu Reeves action scenes. The action is enjoyable to watch and quite brutal too, and I appreciate that John Wick isn't some invincible fighting machine who refuses to go down. He takes his fair share of a beating in this one too. Another compliment I can give this movie that I don't hear much about is that there is this whole world of these assassins and criminals created, but it's mostly disseminated through the interactions he has in the places he visits. I like the fact that they don't go so heavy-handed with the world building, rather he just exists in this world and there's this whole this air of mystery around the life he used to lead. That being said, I think they talk a little too much about just how scary John Wick used to be, which doesn't help when the villains are pretty meh. The dialogue and the acting at times can be really stilted, and some of the musical choices and use of slow-mo in this feel like the movie's trying way too hard to be cool at times. For those reasons I just listed, I'm going to say this movie is good, and I think this one could go in a comfortable B tier. It's a fun action movie, but the rest of it, not so much. It's good, but not great. It's still good, though. It's good. It's a good movie, all right? As most franchise films tend to be, the first one was pretty good one and done. His journey seemed to come to an end, but there were consequences for his actions that were alluded to in that film, and that's where we get John Wick Chapter 2. After John retires for a second time, immediately after the last movie, he's pulled back into the game a second time due to a blood oath that got him out of the game to begin with, and finds himself in a political power struggle between two siblings of the high table. But when John doesn't exactly play nicely, he ends up against even more assassins, and certain decisions he makes in the Continental, which is the global hotel service, among other things, offered to these assassins, well, John might not be retiring anytime soon because he's been made excommunicado. The whole world of assassins are coming after him. Now sure, the villains aren't particularly great. There's a lot of moments of awkward dialogue and acting and even more lore in this film that it just isn't very interesting, but considering there are more unique locations, more elaborate visuals, more visceral and suspenseful action, more aesthetic design choices, especially with the world of the assassins, which John Wick is unfortunately back to associating with, and it's an overall far more enjoyable and interestingly stylized film than the first, yeah, this one is pretty good. I also appreciated the level of restraint that this one showed. It wasn't all over-the-top action, and it didn't have a bunch of grating world building just constantly in your face, which may give you a clue as to what I think about some of the others later down the line. But this is an action film that I was looking for in the first one that I didn't feel like the first one delivered quite as much. It's still got the emotional story. It's still got the crazy action, but it also has a way more interesting style, way more interesting set pieces, some cool world building without going over the top. And honestly, I'm going to say this one is great. It's a fun action movie. It is exactly what I wanted the first one to be, and I think this one elevates what the first one was. So I'm going to put this one in a high A tier. It's a good action movie. Now, the last one ended on a bit of a cliffhanger, and that's what brings us to Keanu Reeves, Chapter John 3 Wick, Parabellum. At least they gave it a cool, unique subtitle. It's got Parabellum in the title. That's something. With John Wick officially excommunicado in the eyes of the Continental, he's got to go on the run across the world, meet some old friends, and figure out a way to earn his freedom and put this life behind him. Yet again. You ever hear the expression that too much of anything is bad for you, especially a good thing? That's how I feel about this movie. Does it have good action and visuals? Yes, but the increasingly aging Keanu Reeves is practically invincible at this point. And the fight scenes, while being good, do end up feeling repetitive at a certain point. Do we visit cool new locations and see more of this world of assassination and crime? Yes, but my God, is all the talking about contracts and blood oaths and rules and consequences, it's just, I'm gonna be frank, it's unbelievably boring. And it's so self-indulgent with its overly grandiose characters, like the Elder, this very regal character who lives in the desert, who is in charge of the high table. Like this world of crime and assassins is just becoming too big for its own good. It's not really believable anymore. Ultimately, so much of what made the first two movies is gone. There's really no heart to the story anymore because the story was pretty much wrapped up and they just keep it going and going and going. And the air of mystery surrounding the world that John lives in is gone because, I mean, as Family Guy's Peter Griffin would say, I feel like the lore of this film insists upon itself. So I'd have to just say this movie is okay, which isn't bad, but if a movie boils down to, yeah, I think I could have just watched the action scenes on YouTube and skipped the rest, then I wouldn't really say it's great either. I'd probably put this in like a C tier. Again, this is all subjective. Opinions can change. That's just what I'm feeling right now. But all this brings us to the conclusion of John Wick's journey, unless they decide to do another one, titled Keanu Reeves, John 4, Chapter Wick. John Wick's journey comes to a close in this film, as his battle with the High Table reaches its climactic conclusion. That is the paper-thin description I am giving this very paper-thin plot. But for as paper-thin as the plot has become, I will give this movie props for actually giving John Wick a conclusion. And pretty much the only conclusion he could have. This is not a life that he could escape, so he's gonna take out who he can along the way. Look, it's better than part 3, because at least things happen, but I don't think it's much better, to be honest. It's filled with a whole bunch of assassins and crime organizations talking about boring rules and systems that have to be followed. Lots of artsy, like, MacGuffins and speeches, and there's only so many times I can just watch an endless number of bad guys run straight at Keanu Reeves so he can shoot them while they're all wearing bulletproof suits and hobbling around because it's not very flexible. But I will say this, I think some of the side characters are more interesting, like the blind assassin dude, Kane. He was pretty cool. I like the finality of the storyline. It feels more consequential than the last one, which I like. And yeah, we get an actual ending for John Wick's character. Of course, you sprinkle in some crazy action and visuals, and you got a pretty alright film, albeit a very long one. There's really no reason for this one to be so long, because it's pretty much just more of the same. Now look, I like the movie for its action and aesthetics. It's probably no secret now that I hate how much of these movies are filled with stupid secret criminal organizations of increasingly stupid size and power, with all their silly dialogue and the film's just mind-numbing self-seriousness, but I did like it more than the third, but I'm still just gonna say it's okay, because really, to be honest, it just got boring. And as good as the action can be, to be completely honest with you, I've seen better and less repetitive action in films with better stories too, including this very same franchise. As far as I guess what these movies are trying to achieve, it's got some alright action and some cool visuals, and I guess that's what's most important, but I still think it's just okay. Now, while the story of John Wick has come to a close, the world of John Wick is only just getting started, and that brings us to a 3-part event, Peacock Original, The Continental, from the world of John Wick. Yeah, can I just say, what a dumb title that is? Why do you have From the World of John Wick in the title? This has nothing to do with John Wick himself. Yes, it's in the same world, but you don't need that in the title, From the World of John Wick. It's so ridiculous. But yes, as I said, this is a prequel to the John Wick films, and here we follow a young Winston, major character from the John Wick movies. In the 1970s, we're witnessing not only his backstory and learning about it, but also his rise to power as the manager of the Continental's United States Hotel, which, if that sounds a little bit boring to you, That's because it is. Now, you see, all this extra lore surrounding the world of John Wick, to me, is exactly that. It surrounds John Wick. The primary focus of these films is the action with a healthy dose of mystery behind how this world actually works. But not all mysteries are meant to be solved, and I don't think this show tells a story that needs to be told at all, or is even really that interesting. I guess if you really wanted to see the origin of the Winston character, here you go. But the action isn't quite as good. It's not really that bad, but it's not as good as the John Wick movies. And the fact that so many characters in this world are now super elite, super killers, kind of diminishes the whole point of John Wick's character and all the dialogue dedicated to how much of a deadly assassin he is, because there's now 1 million deadly assassins. And even the director of the movies and Ian McShane, who normally plays Winston, they both denounced the show. So that kind of tells you something. So for me, it just, you come to this series for Keanu Reeves action for like 2-hour-long movies, not whatever this was. Which is not to say that the John Wick world or series can't be more than that, but man, just, you need to have an interesting story. You don't need to focus so much on like lore, okay? This, like I said at the start of this little subjective mini review, it's interesting when it is the background of the story and you have that mystery, and just kind of trying to solve everything, it doesn't really work for me. So I honestly just think it's bad. I'm going to throw it in D tier. I just didn't really care much about this one, and honestly, by the time you're watching this video, I've probably forgotten most of this series. It's only 3 episodes though, but still, my point still stands. And now we have our latest entry in the John Wick franchise from the world of John Wick, Ballerina. Yep, they still got that really silly prefix in there. Very long. Don't know why. I mean, I guess it's better than just calling it Ballerina. Anywho, set during the events of John Wick 3, we follow a young woman named Eve, the daughter of assassins, training with those ballerina people from John Wick 3 when she embarks on a journey to hunt down the leader of the Cult, a group whom her parents were associated with before their deaths. She does fight her way through the bad guys and gets her revenge on the leader, but unfortunately is forced on the run when the rest of the group place a bounty on her. Now maybe it's recency bias, but I'm actually surprised by how much I enjoyed the movie. Eve is a character with an understandable emotional journey. I'm glad that there's some emotional resonance in this one. Some of the other entries were lacking that. She's got a different fighting style to John Wick, so the fight scenes are more varied. And she isn't invincible either, so there's way more tension in the fighting than 3 and 4. It also had a nice quick runtime of only about 2 hours, so the pacing felt much better too. It's a fun, simple movie that doesn't take itself too seriously, and I think resolved a lot of the problems I had with 3 and 4 and the Continental from the world of John Wick. Very long title. It doesn't get too complicated with the lore either, so I'm just going to say it's good. Like I've said, this is all subjective anyway. My thoughts will probably change the more time I have to think about the movie, but I'm going to say it's good, and I'm going to put it in a B tier. Sure, let's just throw it in B tier. And that does it for my first time watching the John Wick film. So, what did I think of them overall? Surprisingly, kind of a mixed bag for all the praise I've seen them get. There's no denying the quality of action, the crazy set pieces, the cool visuals, and at times the cool world building these films offer. But unfortunately, I found them to be too self-aggrandizing in the lore that's meant to be the background of John's story. The actual heart of the story becoming borderline non-existent as the movies goes on, and the action becoming so over the top at points, it felt like we were just watching invincible Keanu Reeves way past his prime fighting endless waves of bad guys, just kind of making it all feel inconsequential with there's no tension. Look, it's a movie. The good guys are probably gonna win. It's not real anyway. But the important thing to remember when making a good action movie is that you need to avoid doing the same things over and over, and you gotta provide a good story to get the audience invested in and make the actual action scenes feel worthwhile. Like, why is he doing all of this? I say this like I've made an action movie before, and this is all easier said than done, but I think my point still stands. But yeah, those are my thoughts on this film franchise. It's been running for 11 years, and I guess they're going to keep it going. If you've seen any of the John Wick movies, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you all next time. Until then, take care.